Welcome to the Bare Metal Cyber CCISO Prepcast. This series helps you prepare for the exam with focused explanations and practical context. Welcome to the Bare Metal Cyber CISO Prepcast. This series helps you prepare for the exam with focused explanations and practical context. Aligning with established frameworks is one of the most important strategies a CISO can use to bring structure and consistency to an information security program. Framework alignment ensures that technical controls and security policies are implemented in a coherent way across departments, systems, and operational environments. It helps unify the organization under a common approach and provides a reference model that can be followed, measured, and improved. Frameworks also play a critical role in demonstrating compliance with legal, regulatory, and contractual obligations. Whether facing an external audit or conducting an internal review, having policies and controls mapped to known frameworks supports defensibility. At the executive level, framework alignment helps bridge the gap between operational detail and governance priorities. By aligning security controls with executive-level goals, CISOs simplify communication and demonstrate that the security program supports the business's broader mission. There are several frameworks that CISOs are expected to understand and possibly apply depending on the organization's location, industry, and strategic needs. ISO/IEC 27001 is the international standard for building and maintaining an information security management system. It is comprehensive and widely adopted across sectors, particularly for organizations seeking global certification. In the United States, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or CSF, is one of the most widely used tools. It offers a flexible, tiered approach that helps organizations assess their current posture and define a roadmap for improvement. COBIT, developed by ISACA, is a governance-centric framework that emphasizes the alignment of IT functions with business objectives. It is particularly useful for organizations that want to strengthen executive oversight and measure performance at a strategic level. CIS Controls, formerly known as the SANS Top 20, provide prioritized tactical best practices for improving operational security. Finally, risk-specific frameworks like FAIR or ISO 27005 offer structured approaches to risk quantification and assessment. These are used to support decision-making and justify investments based on measurable risk exposure. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other podcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Selecting a framework or multiple frameworks is a decision that requires careful executive consideration. The CISO must assess not only regulatory mandates and industry standards, but also the organization's business goals, operational maturity, and available resources. Some sectors, such as healthcare or financial services, may have mandated frameworks or controls. In other cases, the organization may have more flexibility but must still meet stakeholder or customer expectations. The selected framework must balance strategic goals with compatibility. For example, ISO 27001 may offer international recognition but require significant documentation and structure. NIST CSF may be more flexible but lack the global certification benefits. Scalability and maturity are also important factors. A small company may not be ready to implement a large framework, while a mature enterprise may need something more comprehensive. The CSO is responsible for presenting these trade-offs to executive leadership, gaining board buy-in, and avoiding the temptation to treat frameworks as simple checklists. When frameworks are applied superficially, alignment breaks down and the program loses credibility. Mapping and crosswalking between frameworks is a critical task that enables organizations to benefit from multiple sources of guidance without duplicating effort. Many frameworks share common control goals, but use different terminology or structure. By identifying overlaps and gaps, CSOs can prioritize implementation activities and reduce redundancy. Tools exist to support this effort. For example, crosswalks between NIST, CSF, and ISO 27001 can show where controls align and where gaps exist. These mapping tools help the organization maintain coverage across regulatory and industry requirements. Where guidance conflicts, for example in definitions of risk levels or encryption expectations, tailored policies must be developed to reconcile the differences. Documentation is essential in this process. Crosswalk records provide evidence during audits and help internal stakeholders understand how frameworks relate. Without this documentation, explaining how decisions were made or how coverage is maintained becomes much more difficult. Aligning frameworks to organizational objectives is one of the most strategic roles a CSO can perform. Every control or requirement should ultimately support a business priority. For example, access control policies should protect customer data, ensuring trust and compliance. Network segmentation might reduce the blast radius of a breach, protecting operations and brand reputation. Framework implementations should also be tailored to the organization's risk appetite. A company with high tolerance for downtime might adopt fewer availability controls, while one with low tolerance will invest more heavily in continuity. Over-engineering controls, implementing safeguards that exceed business needs, can waste resources without adding value. Frameworks can also be used to justify security investments. By demonstrating how a new tool or process supports a recognized framework, the CISO can secure funding and align the investment with governance goals. Effective framework alignment supports continuous improvement by embedding evaluation into regular governance processes. Implementing a framework is a significant project, often requiring coordination across departments and extended timelines. It begins with defining the scope, deciding which systems, functions, or regions are in scope, and establishing milestones for implementation. The CISO must assign accountability for each area of control. This includes determining who will draft policies, implement controls, test effectiveness, and track exceptions. Governance, risk, and compliance tools can help monitor alignment by showing which controls are implemented, tested, or pending. Cross-functional dependencies must be managed carefully. IT, legal, audit, and business units all have roles to play, and coordination is required to avoid delays or misalignment. Communication is vital throughout the project. Stakeholders need to understand the goals, status, and gaps of the project. Regular updates to executive sponsors maintain momentum and help address blockers before they become major issues. Once a framework is implemented, its effectiveness must be measured. Key performance indicators and key risk indicators aligned with the framework help track progress and identify gaps. For example, a KPI might track the percentage of controls tested within a given time frame, while a KRI might measure the number of high-risk exceptions that remain unresolved. Internal assessments can help evaluate maturity, how well each area of the framework is implemented, and track remediation efforts. Control effectiveness should be documented using both technical data and process reviews. Exceptions must also be documented with justifications, expiration dates, and risk mitigation plans. Metrics should align with executive and board-level expectations. They must translate technical results into business language, showing how framework alignment reduces risk, improves performance, or supports compliance. Adapting to regulatory change is another reason why framework flexibility is essential. Standards like ISO 27001 and NIST SP 853 are updated periodically. Regulatory bodies such as the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, ENISA, or national authorities may issue new expectations. The CISO must monitor these updates and adjust internal controls, policies, or documentation accordingly. Control baselines may need to be recalibrated to reflect higher or lower risk levels. New guidance such as revised password policies, cloud security expectations, or data sovereignty practices must be integrated into the security program. The organization must also retain the flexibility to pivot if the current framework no longer meets its needs. This may occur due to acquisition, regulatory expansion, or business model change. When modifying framework adherence, the rationale must be clearly documented. This documentation helps demonstrate due diligence and defends against accusations of negligence during audits or incidents. Global organizations face additional complexity in framework alignment. Different jurisdictions may favor different frameworks or impose unique legal obligations. For example, GDPR in the European Union may require different privacy controls than the California Consumer Privacy Act. The CISO must harmonize framework use across multinational operations, ensuring consistent strategy while allowing for local variations. Global consistency helps reduce complexity and improves reporting, but it cannot override local compliance obligations. Data handling, transfer, and sovereignty must be considered when aligning controls. Some countries may prohibit data from leaving their borders, requiring localized processing and storage. Framework alignment also supports third-party oversight. Suppliers, vendors, and partners are often required to comply with a specific framework or demonstrate equivalent control effectiveness. Harmonizing frameworks across the supply chain helps reduce risk and build resilience. On the CCISO exam, candidates will encounter a variety of framework questions. These may include recognizing the scope and purpose of frameworks like ISO 27001, NIST CSF, or COBIT. Scenario-based questions may require choosing a framework based on business goals, resolving a misalignment or mapping between control sets. Governance and risk thinking must be applied throughout. Candidates are expected to understand how framework decisions affect policy development, audit readiness, and operational performance. Integration across domains, such as using frameworks to support vendor assessments, incident response, or compliance reporting, is another key theme. Terminology like control objectives, crosswalking, maturity models, and continuous improvement must be understood and used correctly. CISOs are not just responsible for choosing frameworks, they must lead their implementation, ensure their effectiveness, and use them to support strategic security leadership. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Bare Metal Cyber CISO Prepcast. For more episodes, tools, and study support, visit us at baremetalcyber.com